Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Simplifying Life with Kashira. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to have a truly exceptional guest with us. She is a master storyteller, human constellation maker. I really have to understand what that is, and a passionate advocate for leadership development. Her journey is woven with threads of creativity, curiosity, and a deep commitment to uncovering the stories that shape our world. We have Vipasha Devi Tilak. Vipasha, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me with you.
It's our absolute pleasure that we are hosting you and we're doing this podcast. We're going to be uncovering a lot of interesting ideas, how we can come up with good stories to have engaging conversations. I just want to understand that what do you think about storytelling and how this thing sparked in your life? What made you think that you could pursue storytelling as a career, as a passion?
hmm I feel stories are what helps shape our beliefs and our identity, right? If you think about like the beginning of civilization, when the only job of human beings was to find how to eat well, sleep well, wake up, go to the farm, wake up when the sun rises, work in the farm the whole day with your cattle, with your sheep, with your poultry, with your plants, and then set off when the sun sets. And what do you do after the sun sets? You hang around with a group of people and you talk, you communicate, and you share stories. Ultimately, the purpose of our life is to live a life where we have enough stories to tell ourselves and people that we love around us. And stargazing was like one of the first forms of oral storytelling, right? Because we look into the sky. There's nothing else to do in life, right? Like after you're back
Yeah.
from the farm, there's nothing else for you to do. You look at the stars and then you start to make stories about the stars. So oral storytelling has always been a part of human civilization, for the simple reason that that's what makes us as human beings connect with each other, right? The moment you hear a story from someone, you may not remember what they said, but you will remember, even if you meet them like 5 months later, it's like, yeah, I remember the story of, when the bird came and like ate your head, or when you went on a van with chickens in the for your last road trip. And stories is what
Yeah.
helps us remember moments from life and build those moments of connection with people.
My God, the way you cited it, it is actually so simple, but at the same time so powerful. This is what we've been doing, right? Whenever we meet people, there's always some or other story to pick up the conversations with.
hmm
And
You know what?
we
My
kind of,
my other
yeah,
sorry. My other thesis is that now
go
that
ahead, go
when
ahead.
technology will completely take us over, right? The one thing that we will lack is human connection, right? AI can take over all these odd jobs. It cannot take human interpersonal storytelling away from you. You will still need to learn how to tell your story. You will still, and storytelling is such a powerful tool because it can help you mobilize people. It can help you create influence. It can help you drive change. So it's not like one esoteric
Yeah.
thing that's only meant for like these super CEO, CXO type leaders. We tell stories amongst our friends. When my lover calls me and says, "How was your day?" Right? You don't say, "I did this at 11 o'clock, this at 11:20, this at 11:35." You tell the story of your day. So you are telling stories. You just don't recognize that what you're doing is telling stories every single day.
Absolutely. Oh my God, that's so true. My next question actually is on the similar context. There's a big struggle to write speech. And I
hmm
myself have gone through that challenge because I keep thinking, okay, what is it that I could write? And your keynotes or any kind of a speech is totally irrelevant and incomplete until there is a personal touch.
hmm
And that personal touch comes from your life experiences, from your stories. I just want to understand from you. Like after a couple of years, we forget what has happened in our life. So how
hmm
do you recall all these moments and always have these stories on top of your mind to narrate and have engaging conversations?
Amazing. I have a terrible memory. Like, I have a terrible memory means like I used to be so good with like numbers and names and people. I've been trained as a journalist, so I'd be on the field. like reporting stories, etc. I still remember my childhood friend's landline number, like 26252525. I even know like
Wow.
the STD codes of cities. But if you ask me in modern
Uh-huh.
age, like, do I remember anyone's number? Maybe my father, not maybe, my father, my mother, my sister, my husband, and that's it. Over. I don't remember anyone else's number in my life. The trick to remembering stories, for me at least, is to create a bank of stories. And what that means is every day when my day gets over, in my journal, I write something called highlight of the day. And it's that one
Okay.
small moment, it's a small image, or it could be like one sentence I shared with someone, or it could be something that I experienced, an emotion that I experienced, and I just jot that down in my journal. And months later, I'll just be chronicling through and I'll say, hey, something on July 31st matched with something on September 7th. And can I just link them together and build a story around it? So every day I just like
Uh-huh.
throw ideas. And once I throw
Uh-huh.
ideas, storytelling is about connecting the dots. Now, to connect the
Right.
dots, you need to have the dots. So every day I put the dots together, and like a constellation maker, many months
Uh-huh.
later, you can draw the patterns, you can draw the relationships between each of these very disparate moments, and then make
When
stories.
you say that you journal it every day, are you talking about like manual journaling, putting it in your hard diary? Are you talking about digitizing it and then able to like search data as per some keywords? Like, what is it that you like to do?
So when I started journaling, I had a very simple process, but now I've become an advanced journaler. I've been doing it for four
Okay.
years now, and every single night before I go to sleep, I have a very exhaustive journal, because now my journal is also a tracking mechanism, as well as, so
Uh-huh.
if you think about it from a researcher's lens, it has both qualitative
Uh-huh.
as well as quantitative data. So it'll tell me how many steps I
Uh-huh.
did today, how much water did I drink, did I meditate, did I read, what did I learn. So it'll have like data very systematically organized, but it'll also have things like, what was the highlight of my day, what was that one
Mhm.
moment that made me feel like, this day was worth it, what do I feel
Yeah.
grateful for today, what was the focus of my day today. So it has a lot of qualitative questions also. And then I
Mhm.
journal on an app called Notion. And then I don't look at what I
Okay.
have journaled. I just go freestyle.
Okay.
I fill the columns in, and then after that, I do a freestyle journal, which is like, how when you were a child, you'll be like, I woke up today morning, I saw the sun was orange in color. And then you
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
write with a sense of just curiosity, not even wonder, just curiosity about life. And when you keep doing that
Yeah.
over time, I'll be like, okay, one day I'll be like, okay, let me start reflecting what I did. And then I will see these moments. I also do a monthly reflection, which is at the end of the month. I have a huge process which takes me like 1.5 hours every month. But it's like, what are the
Mhm.
highlights of the month? What are some of the interesting people that I've met this month? What are some interesting, uncomfortable things that I've done for myself this month? And
Uh-huh.
everything is like super chronicled now. So it will come very systematically. But
Uh-huh.
this has happened after like 4 years. I've been journaling for over like 1,000 days now. So there's a little bit of a system that's been created in this process.
Wow.
My
That's
secret
a
is
great
this.
plan. Yeah.
If somebody were to write my biography after I'm dead, they can just like look at my journal. They'll know what the color of the sun that day was. Was it violet, or was it like, purple blue? So they'll have
Yeah.
every detail about my life in that journal. Of course, it's super private, but yeah.
No, no, absolutely. You're making the job easy for the biographers. Oh, that's really amazing, you know. I'll tell you something because I've recently started crafting these speeches and I
Hmm.
really need good stories to add life to my speeches. Because I had never been into journaling. I had always
Hmm.
heard that journaling is a good practice. But now, when I've started doing it and I look back, I try to recall the moments, all the moments which were like really important, and I had like just remembered them for years. Now, I find it difficult to recall them because I didn't do journaling at that time. So, I really have to push and put a lot of pressure on my head to think that, okay, what is it that I can talk about in my next speech? And
Hmm.
because now it is a recurring pattern that I have to be ready with certain number of speeches, so that wherever I'm invited, I can just go and have my content ready and I can talk about it. Really want to say it like shamelessly out there that I do find it difficult sometimes that okay, what should be the content? So maybe if example I would know that this is the outline, this is the message that I'd like to deliver to the audience, but to give that message you need to
Mm-hmm.
pack it really well. You can't just throw it
Mm-hmm.
like that. And that packing
Mm-hmm.
comes with your substantial stories. Recently started journaling, like I've started writing one or two lines about what I've done, but recalling what has happened in the past is like really difficult. I remember when we were chatting on LinkedIn, you spoke about some story from your childhood and something
Mm-hmm.
from your career that got me more connected. That how are you able to recall? So were you into journaling even since those days, like when you were a kid? How was your childhood like how did you grow into the storytelling?
I used to journal as a kid only when I was angry. So if I had a fight with my father, I would like
Uh-huh.
write, today Appa and I had a fight. I came back home. He asked me to come home by 7 p.m., but I came home at 7:03 p.m. and therefore I got scolded. So I would write like really very basic sort of journaling and then I like tear it over. So if I had like something with like an argument in school or a kid bullied me or I had a fight with my father, these were the things that I would journal. But of course, now I have no, I that time we used to do like pen and paper type things, so I don't have access to them
Yeah.
anymore. What really helps me connect with my past is meditation. So when I meditate, after a while, you will get, when you meditate, before you come to the state of being present, you'll always be in the past or the future, right? You'll be
Mhm.
thinking, oh, that day this happened, or when I finish this meditation, I will go out and I will do this, or I'll go eat something, or I'll go chat with someone. But after a while
Uh-huh.
you start to like center yourself. So meditation really helps me in reflecting where I am in life and you know going back to those moments. But to
Mhm.
answer, a different way of answering your question was, when you're doing a speech, like how do I bank into or lean into stories, right? Because stories really create that moment of connection with your audience. There are three
Yeah.
types of stories, right? One
Mhm.
is personal stories. They are stories that only you can tell, right? Because
Yeah.
they are seeped in your life experience, they are seeped in your values, your philosophy, and those are the most difficult ones to tell. Okay. The
Yeah.
second type of stories are brand stories. So you can reference like a Steve Jobs story and the launch of the Apple, or you can reference an ad. It could be like the other day I saw one ad. It had like a Zoom calendar with like slots written on it, and from 3 to 5 p.m. it had a break segment in the Zoom calendar, in the Google Calendar thing. And then it said Kit Kat in the break.
Uh-huh.
And that was
Uh-huh.
the ad, like, have a break, have a Kit Kat sort of a thing. So you can
Yeah.
reference stories that, that brands have, stories that, people have, like a Napoleon story or a, like a Marcus Aurelius story. So you can
Uh-huh.
reference that. The third type of stories that I love leaning into are stories that you hear in your childhood, which is the dog and the jackal, the elephant
Yeah.
and the tortoise. Those stories really get people. What is the aim of telling a story? The aim of telling a story is to take somebody from their world and bring them into your world, right? So when you say
Right.
once upon a time, automatically you're like, what was that time like? What was the color of the tree? How were the mountains like? So lean
Yeah.
into different types of storytelling. And what I do myself, right, is that I
Uh-huh.
have I have something called a content bank. And in this
Okay.
content bank, I have three sets of stories. Like I'll have like some Panchatantra stories, some Jataka stories, some stories that are, like brand driven, or it's, I must have seen a really interesting talk by someone or a video by someone or a quote by someone, and what's the story around that. And the third one that I lean into are my own personal stories, stories that nobody else in the world can tell but me. So
Mm-hmm.
when somebody says, how did you decide to become a storyteller? Your story would be very different from my story. How it
Mm-hmm.
started for me was that when I was young, my grandfathers and my grandmothers, we'd all sit in a circle, and they'll all start telling stories that, when we grew up, this was what our life was like, or when the war happened, when India was fighting independence, this is what was happening. When my father was in the army, these are the type of stories that happened. And then I grew listening to these stories. My
Mm-hmm.
father was my first storyteller in my life, and every night before I go to sleep, he would tell me a bedtime story. Except when he would tell me the story, he would dramatize the characters. He would have dialogues. He'll say, the wind moved. So you can imagine what that world was like. And my mother had
Mhm.
only one story, which was a Punyakoti story about a cow and a tiger. Every night she has only one story to tell me. My father has like this entire kaleidoscope, and he'll
Uh-huh.
say, huff and puff and blow your house. And I remember like giggling as a child, saying, "Oh wow, what happened?" So stories really have the ability to transport you into a different world, and you
Yeah,
just need to lean into them from time to time because they create the sense of connection, they create the sense
yeah.
of authenticity, and it really has the power to bring people together.
I love the idea of having a content bank.
Hmm.
And I think that is something really important for people who are into creating contents and the keynote speeches. They should be doing it. I really love the content bank idea. I think I'm so sorry, but I'm going to steal it.
Oh, please go ahead. I have something, it's not called, like, I call it a story bank, which is
Uh-huh.
just like, like you have like these secrets in your tijori. You
Uh,
keep them in your locker. I have like these stories in my locker. And whenever
yeah,
I know it's something about like vulnerability, or when it's about creating connection or anything of that sort, I can just like lean into that bank and say, hey, what would really make this an interesting experience for the audience? Because
yeah,
every story doesn't work with every audience. You need to really map and understand, hey, what is something, for example, if you're speaking to a group of real estate agents, your talk is
yeah,
going to be very different from what it would be if you were sitting with a room of technologists. Right, so you have to tweak your stories based on the audience that you're speaking to also. Of
yeah,
course, your
yeah,
core message doesn't change, right? Because what your years of experience, your research, or what you really stand for, that
mm,
doesn't change. The body of work doesn't change, but your tone, your
yeah,
language, your vocabulary, your
mm,
jokes, your humor, your stories, they would have to be slightly modified depending on who the audience is, so that it makes most meaning to them. Stories are not about yourself. Stories are always about the audience, and
yeah,
sometimes it can be an audience of one. It could be like a job interview where somebody says, hey, so tell me about yourself. What do? You tell a story, right?
yeah,
Or if you meet a bunch of people at a quote unquote networking event, which is, I'm still trying to find a good word for networking. They're like, so what do? Right? And then what do? You start telling a
you
story
tell
about
a
your
story.
life.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And when you go on stage, what do? You tell the story of your life. So wherever you go, depending on who the audience is, the type of story, the length of story, the intent of the story would keep like modifying itself.
it's like knowing your audience is a key to be able to address them and come up with a story you'd like to cite it to them. And that actually brings me to a related question, that has it ever happened with you in your entire career of storytelling till date? You told a story and it somehow didn't land. Has it ever happened?
Of course,
Sorry, I'm
of
going to
course.
put you on spotlight and ask you the embarrassing stuff, but this is really important for people to understand that everybody goes through such moments.
Yeah, so sometimes you think of stories in your mind, and you're like, this is like my party trick story, right?
Yeah,
Whenever I tell the story, it always makes people giggle. It always makes them laugh. And I was
yeah,
doing a talk this year with a bunch of like very young, like they were a social commerce platform, very,
huh,
very young audience, and my joke didn't land. Nobody was laughing. They're like, who is this chick who's telling us this story? And then I was like, I had to quickly change the mood, because you need to be very, very perceptive about the energy in the room when you're telling a story. You know when somebody is paying attention to you. You absolutely know when you don't have somebody's attention.
yeah,
Right? And in those times, generally, if it's not like a stage talk, and it's more of a 50, 100, 200 people talk in like a closed room, I would
mhm,
quickly switch to an exercise or an activity or a question, because I know people are like getting bored or they're feeling tired. So how can you spark energy from them? Because only when
yeah,
your energy is feeding off their energy, right? So
yeah.
constantly to make this balance of, okay, you know what, my joke sucked, it didn't land well. Now I somehow need to like salvage the situation and really need to think on the feet. So you call
Yeah.
someone to do a role play, or you call someone with like, okay, how many of you experience this? And then they probably raise their hands. So right after that, I said, okay, so my joke didn't land well, and that's all right. Like, I have a failed career in stand-up comedy, but tell me a scene from a movie that's really worked for you. So somebody said, Dil Chahta Hai something something. Somebody said, Zindagi
Yeah.
Na Milegi Dobara mein something something. And I said, each time you're telling a moment from a film is that it's actually a story. And that was like their aha moment. So sometimes you are not able to articulate the story because it happens. But if you're able
Yeah.
to elicit a story from the audience and make
Yeah.
them connect to you as a human being, that also totally works.
Mm. That's power pack. True, true, absolutely. And when you do these exercises in between engagement where your time permits, I think that can really make a great change.
Before every kind of engagement that I do, it's not something I do publicly, it's something I do privately, which is I draw a mood graph of
Okay.
every piece of content that I have. There would be a mood graph saying how does
Uh,
it start? Does it have participatory elements from the a? Does it have the scope to have participatory elements from the audience? If it does,
mhm,
am I engaging the audience in the beginning? Then what is the
mhm.
journey that they go on? And like how when you make a film, you have like a storyline. The story goes up and down. Hero
Yeah,
heroine ऐसे प्यार करते हैं, फिर उसके बाद one papa comes, then the story will go down, then there'll be some
yeah,
like jhagda magda, and then they'll go up. So every story has an arc. There is a mood graph for every story. You need to know what the mood graph of your story is. You should always start with something that makes the audience immediately connect to you within the first like 10 to 15 seconds. And
mhm,
when you end, you should always have like a 5-second pause after which they can really reflect on the aha of it. And then you
yeah,
can pack things in between. So drawing that mood graph of how does the energy in the room flow, and how does it create resonance with the audience. It's again, stories are not about yourself, it's about the people who give you time and attention, because attention is now like an unbuyable commodity, right? You can't really buy attention today. So and if you do get attention, then please make good use of it.
true, true, absolutely. Well,
Do
that's
you
amazing. Think your skills as a journalist have somehow influenced and accentuated your skills of storytelling?
I've been trained as a journalist, which means that you need to have the eye to look at stories in other people,
Yeah.
right? And looking at story, and my thesis was this, that Newton discovered gravity, but who discovered Newton? Till the time there's nobody discovering the Newtons of the world, there are no stories of gravity to tell, right? So it becomes important for this person who's an idea discoverer, who's like a story hunter. So all through my journalistic career, I used to be a story hunter. I used to look for stories around me and see how can you package them in very interesting ways, in very innovative ways, and it's form agnostic or medium agnostic. I worked in the print, I worked in the electronic, I worked in the digital, where I would constantly tell stories of other people. And then I transitioned to become a curator, where I was like, okay, I know that I can help people tell their stories. How can I help them tell stories for the stage?
Uh,
Right. And now, which is a very different skill set. It extends itself and it borrows itself from some of the fundamentals, but it is a very different skill set to tell a story on stage, right? When you watch a Instagram reel, it could be a story, but the way you tell that story is very different when you're engaging
mhm.
with a group of like 1,000 people in a room. So that from the curator piece, I was like, hey, how can I start coaching people for anyone to tell their stories? Because I feel like everybody is born with stories all their life. Right, we just
Yeah.
don't recognize them as storytelling. We probably don't put the vocabulary of storytelling into these moments, into these memories, but every moment in our life is a story that's waiting to be told. You just need to find a way to like ex- tap into it and explore it. And it's a 5-second moment, it's a small moment in your life, but you have to create that entire scene around that small moment, and that's what makes a good story.
That's lovely. There are people who love to discover their storytelling skills by writing themselves and also going on stage and representing themselves. So,
Mhm.
what advice would you offer to these individuals who are discovering their storytelling skills in case they want to pursue it as a passion? Do you see that just the storytelling could be a career for people? And is that something which you'll advise for people to pick it up?
Mhm. Uh, Two parts to it. One is that not all stories are meant to be performed.
Mm-hmm.
And let that just sink in for a moment, right? You will have many of these stories in your life, but not every story needs to be told.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know what is the difference between a personal story and a private story. Right? So private stories are just for yourself, but personal stories are stories that you can share with people in a work context, in a networking context, or in a job interview context. So that is one. The second is stories also have different forms and mediums. Somebody can tell stories through photography as a medium, which is, and that person is also a storyteller. Somebody can tell stories using film as a medium. That person's also a storyteller. Somebody can be like me who likes to tell stories on stage, and that is also a storyteller. So storytelling doesn't come with any one specific box or one specific
Mm-hmm.
dabba. You don't need to really fit in. You need to use that as a tool and find your own format and find your own medium in that process. Yesterday I went for a spoken word show, right, and right before that there was a concert, and it was a beautiful symphonic western classical concert with like a 30-piece orchestra, and people are like really really wrapped with attention. And then when there's a solo storyteller who comes on stage, the crowd started to, like, mellow down. People started to exit because the onus of a storyteller to just always capture the attention of public vis-a-vis different other formats of storytelling, like music
Yeah. Yeah.
storytelling or like theatrical storytelling, is
Yeah.
very different. So you need to choose, even within storytelling, what is that medium that you really want to stand for. You don't necessarily need to make a career out of every skill set that you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can just use that as a as a paintbrush, right?
Mm-hmm.
And use that as like a stroke. It's your secret ingredient. So you can use storytelling in sales, you can use storytelling in marketing, you can use storytelling to create influence, you can use storytelling in employee retention. So there are many ways in which this tool can manifest itself. So you need to again see who your audience is and what kind of storytelling would work best for them.
So it's basically adding it, like as you said, use it as a paintbrush, and you can club it with whatever skills you have through which you can make your source of income. And then you can use storytelling in so many various forms. That's really amazing, lovely. And I think this is the best advice which people should consider while they are pursuing storytelling as a profession. That's amazing.
But if you want to pursue storytelling as a profession, like I said, there are many ways to do it. You can be a
Hmm.
coach. You can be a storytelling coach. You can be a curator of programs and events and festivals. Again, you're helping telling stories. You could be a speaker, wherein you are the storyteller telling your story. You could be,
Yeah,
again, like I said, you can be a DOP. You can be a cinematographer. You can be an editor. You can be a filmmaker. You can be a poet. You can be a musician. Each of them is telling a story. It's just that the medium is very different, right? You call Kabir also a
absolutely.
storyteller because Kabir is a storyteller, right? You say Gulzar Saab is a storyteller. He chooses to write stories as lyrics, but he's also a storyteller.
Mm.
So yeah, storytelling is agnostic. It is super universal, and I feel like, when we'll be in this apocalypse of human civilization and everything will die, we'll be like, the only thing left for us to do is tell stories, just like the way we started at the beginning of civilization.
Absolutely. And just as we started in the beginning of this podcast, that how we were before all this digitization and everything, that we used to just sit together and tell stories. And I think that is a note we are concluding on. This is lovely. This has been one of the most interesting conversations because I always believe that storytelling is a magic in the hands of people who want to present themselves, who want to take stages and talk and have engaging conversation. It is actually a superpower. And I'm definitely going back with some of my key takeaways that I said that I've stolen it. I'm going to have my regular journals and the content bank because that is what is the requirement of the hour. If you are in that kind of a profession, you need to have such kind of contents. Otherwise, it becomes irrelevant. So thank you so much once again for all your time today and all the insights that you've shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I hope you take stories as a tool, as a paintbrush, draw your own canvas, put your own colors, and no matter what it is, it will be beautiful, at least for yourself. So use the power of storytelling.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful note to conclude. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kashira. And I really, really am very, very grateful for the time of the listeners and as well as your time. And thank you so much for hosting me with so much grace. Thank you.